Hi and welcome to my channel. I'm Simon and today I am back with my June book haul part 1, a little bit belatedly because we're well past the middle point of the month, but it's here and I think it's going to be quite a speedy one because I have mentioned some of these books before on the channel, and also I'm being much more, I'm curating my hauls a lot more and not just picking books that I've been sent that I might read at some point. They're just going onto the shelf straight away. Well, no, they're not actually. They go onto a little part of my book trolley, right? I can never do the pointy thing here. There, and wait for the 1 in 1 out rule, obviously. But these are the ones that I've been sent that I'm like, yeah, I really think I'm going to get to these at some point. And I think that's just a better way of doing things, maybe. I don't know if you agree or not and you want to see everything. Let me know in the comments down below. But let's get cracking. Sorry, this could be a sneezy edit because my hay fever is still rife. I love the word rife. Anyway, right, let's get cracking with the books. And as always, I'm going to go to the books that I was sent by publishers first, and then on to a book that I was sent as a gift and some that I bought myself. So I asked for this proof. It is The Fell by Sara Moss. I absolutely loved Summer Water when I read it last month. It's going to be one of my books of the year so far, I think. I read it actually very aptly in the middle of nature, although it wasn't raining, in Wales, not Scotland. I'll link that reading weekend vlog below, but I just thought it was phenomenal. This is her next novel, which is coming out in November, and I believe it's about, it's set during the pandemic, and it's about a woman who goes out when she shouldn't. I think she hurts herself, and it's how people obviously aren't in touch with each other as much and what goes on there. I think it also looks at social distancing, which I think is going to be really interesting, and it being Sara Moss is going to be amazing. Now, speaking of Sara Moss, the lovely folk at Granta sent me all of these, which are Sara Moss's back catalogue. She's now moved to Picador. We have Cold Earth, which I've already read, and I really, really liked it, and that also dealt with the pandemic, interestingly. And then we have several that I haven't. So I have not read Night Walking yet. And I feel like this is the first of an unofficial trilogy, unless I've got them in the wrong order. And I want to read these over the coming summer months. I might read one a month for a little bit. If you fancy reading along, let me know. We could do a Moss over summer or a Sara Moss summer or something like that. Moss over summer. What was I thinking? Where's the alliteration in that, Simon Savage? So yeah, we have this one. Then we have Signs for Lost Children. And I should say I don't know anything about any of them. Bodies of Light. And then we also have the Tidal Zone, which got a lot of book buzz when it was out. I remember Jen really loved this. I think Lauren and Mercedes did too. Did Jen? I can't remember. Anyway, but yeah, I know a little bit more about this. This is about a young girl whose heart stops and how her father reacts when he gets the call. I think she survives, but yeah, it's going to be interesting, that one. And he sneezed again. And finally, Ghost Wall by Sara Moss, as we've been talking about Sara Moss for all of this time, which I read and really, really loved a couple of years ago. I loved the brooding atmosphere of this novel, and yeah, it got me hooked, but Summer Water took it to another level. Then we have another Sara, but not Sara Moss. This is Sarah Cran's Come Closer, and can you see that eye? I just think this is such a brilliant cover. It's so simple but so brilliant, and this is some kind of horror story. It doesn't give very much away on the back at all, which really, really intrigues me, but it says that there are strange noises in the apartment, impulsive behaviour, intense dream, and yeah, blackouts and more. So I'm looking forward to reading this. I think it's going to be someone who's like spiralling out of control, but could it be because of what's going on in the house? Then I have Island by Siri, Ranva, Hjelm, Jacobson, and this is translated from the Dutch by Caroline Waite, and I really, really want to read a lot more fiction in translation. Really, really do. I've just noticed this quite matches this top, and this is sort of auto-fiction, I think, as it looks at the Faroe Islands and the history of them over 3 generations, some of which links to the author themselves. So that sounds really interesting. I love books set on islands, so very much excited for this one. Now, I have a book that isn't coming out until 2022. It's the first one, or maybe it's the second one that I've got that's coming out in 2022. Anyway, it's The Empty Greatcoat by Rebecca F. John, whose novel, The Haunting of Henry Twist, I absolutely loved. She has set up her own publishing house and she's publishing this as well as other books, and she got in touch and asked if I'd like to read it, and I said yes please, because I loved The Haunting of Henry Twist so much. I don't really know what it's about, but you know me, if you've been watching this channel for any amount of time, I don't like to know too much. I think it's always going to be something to do with the war, which makes me a little bit nervous because I'm not a big fan of war novels, but I trust Rebecca F. John, and I'll look forward to getting to that. Then we have 2 finished copies that I have mentioned the books of before. Filthy Animals by Brandon Taylor. I love the way they've done this. I loved actually the proof as well. It was gorgeous, but this is really, really lovely. It's from Daunt Books. It's out very soon. It's a short story collection, and yeah, if I wasn't doing, as I record this, I'm about to go away travelling for work for a week up and down the country, and I'm going to be buying books in independent bookshops, because it's indie bookshop week here in the UK. But otherwise, I'd be really, really tempted to take a copy of the proof of this away with me and read some of the short stories, but I'm not. Then another book that I've mentioned on the channel before is Everyone in This Room Will Someday Be Dead by Emily Austen. What a cheery title, and it does sound like the book centres very much around death, and a young woman called, is it Gilda? Yes, Gilda, who is kind of constantly thinking about death and other people's death and her own death. And I think she ends up getting a job at either a funeral home or somewhere where like, oh yeah, it's at the local church where people give free therapy around grief. And she ends up with a receptionist job there, which kind of goes everything, because she's not religious, she's queer, she's atheist, but also obsessed with death. So sounds intriguing and interesting and unusual, so I will be heading to that at some point. I asked for Granta for this, and that's when they also kindly offered to send me all of the Sara Moss books, because I said, oh, do you have any? And they're like, yes. But the one that I asked for was The Dangers of Smoking in Bed by Mariana Enriquez, which was up for the International Booker Award. As I said, I want to read much more fiction in translation. This is short stories translated from the Spanish by Megan McDowell. I've just heard amazing things about this, that's all I've heard. I do have her first collection as well, which is Things We Lost in the Fire. So yeah, I'm hoping to really, really enjoy this, and then I've got one to head back to, which is always exciting. There's fantastic quotes from Kirsty Logan, Lisa McInerney and Lauren Groff on the back, and yeah, really, really intrigued this. Although I have to say, have you seen the American edition? Because the American cover, I love. Then, now this almost didn't end up on this pile, because it's not one that I'm sure that I'm going to definitely head to, but then I was thinking about it, and I flicked through and I was like, it's in vignettes, so you probably will. And it's Jan Gru's memoir, I Live a Life Like Yours. And this, I think, well, it says a radical, moving memoir of living in a vulnerable body. And that was also what slightly put me off, because I'm still at that point, even though I have a chronic illness myself. I have a condition called Derkham's. You can go and Google it. And yeah, I'm still quite nervous about reading about physical conditions, disability and chronic illness, because it really makes me aware of my own, which day to day I am aware of, and sometimes just don't want to be, especially when I'm going through, because Derkham's kind of, there's a lot of pain involved, and so yeah, I don't know, sometimes reading about it can make me feel like I'm going to have a flare. So yeah, but I do need to get better, like I was saying about reading fiction in translation, just reading more books about disability and chronic illness, because I will probably find some solace in some. I think it's just something I've got to work through. Then we have, again, this one almost I wasn't sure, The Snow Line by Tessa McWait, but then I read it and it's about four strangers arrive in India for a wedding. They end up climbing a mountain together, and then I think something happens, and it's how these four people interact with each other and whatever the thing that happens is. Like I said, I don't like to know too much. And I've been saying for ages I want to read more books set in India. Well, hello, there's this one, and it's quite short and slight, so I should be able to get through that. Speaking of India, this book doesn't start in India. It starts in Sri Lanka, but then ends up in India. And this is about a young man whose grandmother's carer has died, slightly suspiciously, by falling into a well, and their neck has been broken, either by the fall or they pushed or what was going on. And he decides to head back to Delhi to find out more. But as he does so, he goes through a passage of the whole of Sri Lanka, and the book is Anuk Pragasam, a passage north, and so this follows going through Sri Lanka up to the north and then into India, and I think that's going to be really fascinating. So yeah, I'm looking forward to that, although not many paragraphs, so that could be fatal with me. It's going to have to be really gripping to get away with that malarkey. That's on my pet peeves, books with no photographs. Books, I don't really, oh no, I do love books with photographs, but non-fiction, I don't like books with no paragraphs. Then a book that I was sent for one of my work projects. It's Frank Cottrell Boyce's Noah's Gold, illustrated by Steve Lenton. I don't read that much children's fiction. I don't mind a bit of YA every so often, so this is going to be quite a different read for me. I'm hoping that I get to it before the work thing that I've got to do, because I need to, but we will see. I should whiz through it. There's lots of pictures and stuff in here as well. So yeah, but it's not my usual kind of thing, and I'm just being honest about that. So, and actually, I'm going to mention it again. Lots of you seem to think that like all of my reading is work reading. I think my work reading is probably about 30%, 20% of how much I read. So just to clarify, sorry, more sneezing. Penultimately from publishers, and this was sent unsolicited, but sounds very much my kind of thing. We have Catch the Rabbit by Lana Bastazic, and it says on the front, two women plunging into post-war Bosnia like two Alices into Wonderland. And this is about a woman called Sara who's been living in the UK really happily with her partner, and she gets a phone call from a friend she hasn't seen for years, Ledgler, whose brother went missing, supposedly dead, several years ago in Bosnia, and it calls her home, and they go on a kind of road trip. I think that does have some sort of reflections, or Lana interlinks the sort of story of Alice in Wonderland into it too, so there might be some magical realism. I'm not quite sure, but I'm really intrigued for that one. And then last but not least from publishers, because I do them in size order, is Black and Blue by Palm Sandhu, and this is one woman's story of policing and prejudice with Stuart Preble. She was Palm was the former chief superintendent of the Metropolitan Police. I think it's going to be fascinating, probably quite shocking and also probably quite depressing, but fascinating at the same time. And this has pictures in it, and I've just spotted as well. There's a picture of Palm with my friend Sophie Rayworth. How random. Anyway, yeah, I don't mind pictures in non-fiction, photographs in non-fiction. So yeah, I'm looking forward to giving that a whirl. Then on to one gift. My lovely friend Kate Mayfield, the author, sent me this collection of poems, Uncomfortable Minds by Larry Sorin, who is a friend of hers. And I am trying to read much more poetry, so I shall give this a whirl. I don't know what kind of poetry it is or what it's about or anything, but I shall find out. Speaking of poetry, onto books that I have bought myself. Now, I can't remember if I've shared this in a wrap up before or not, because I can't remember if I bought this in the beginning of June or at the end of May, so I'll mention it again. Why not? I've read it and it's corking. It's Andrew Macmillan's Pandemonium, his third collection. I really love Andrew's poetry. Physical is one of my favourite poetry collections of all time, and I think this might be slightly more like that one. Playtime was quite different, but I think this might go more to that sort of queer bodies, all those kind of things. Then I have rejoined my book club that I started back with Kim from the blog Reading Matters, who some of you might know as Kim Bofo on Instagram or other places. And we started 11 years ago with founders. We both left London, so we left the group, but because of the world going digital with everything going on, rejoined. My best friend since I was 4, Polly, is part of that group. In fact, she now runs the whole book club. Now, what she's chosen, I mean, how big is that? She's chosen this as our next book club. I think she's punishing me. The size of the text, Polly, if you see this, honestly. But I think I might listen to it on audio, actually. It's Watching the English by Kate Fox, which is all about the hidden rules of English behaviour. And it's been revised because I think, not maybe because of Brexit, but it's definitely revised because of something. Yeah, anthropology, which I don't really understand what it is. I'll find out. There we go. I also picked up, and I was going to just binge read this, but then life got in the way, as it always does. But I picked this up because I haven't read any Val McDermid for ages. A Place of Execution is set in Scardale in the Peak District, which is near where I'm from. I love Val McDermid's writing. This is a standalone. I actually shouldn't have technically bought this because I have loads of Val McDermid's books that I haven't read. I've got very bad, my crime shelves are just there. I've got very bad at reading the series that I love and carrying on with them. So I need to sort that out. But yeah, I got myself this. I might do a vlog trying new series because I've also got loads of like the first, second and third of a series that I've never read, but I've just kept collecting because that's what happens. Then on to some books that I got in charity shops. When me and my mum went charity shopping, I did a June catch up with her. I'll link that down below if you want to see it. First up, Salvage the Bones by Jesmyn Ward. This is a gorgeous American floppy edition. I actually realised that I had this one already, so I gave my mum my copy, but I just love this. I absolutely loved Sing and Buried Sing by Jesmyn Ward and said that I would read every other book of hers, and of course I haven't. There's a theme sometimes, isn't there, with me and my reading. Mum made me pick up The Siege by Helen Dunmore. Mum absolutely loves Helen Dunmore. I wasn't sure about Helen Dunmore because I'd only read her Hammer Horror one, which was good, but it wasn't great. It was called The Greatcoat, so that's kind of ironic. But yeah, and then her poetry collection, which I didn't really get. And then I read A Spell in Winter, or A Spell of Winter, and absolutely blinking loved it. So I've got this one to go to. Again, it's about war, but it's about a different kind of sort of tale from the wars. I'm not big on the wars. I studied them so much at school. Then I got Tales of Persuasion by Philip Hensher. I realised I already have the hardback of this when I got home, but never mind, because I can read one and keep the other, and then give one to somebody else who might love it. Yeah, short story collections. I think it's all about different times when people are persuading people to do things that maybe they shouldn't, or maybe they want them to, that they didn't think they wanted to, etc. Intriguing, I think it will be. And then this is a book that I got the proof of and the finished copy of and then gave away because I wasn't sure it was going to be for me, and then ever since I've heard nothing but amazing things. Sod's Law. It's Imagine Me Gone by Adam Hazlitt, and I believe this is about a man called Michael who is thinking back to when his father just one day got up and walked away and left the family behind and vanished. I love a story like that where someone just literally vanishes for whatever reason. You don't know it, you hopefully find out about it, and sometimes you don't, and that's fine too. But I just love that premise. It's it's kind of something that really intrigues me. Anyway, I think it's because he is a gay man who has decided to go and live his true life, but in doing so has had to leave his real life behind. I think that would be very intriguing. And last but not least, one that I've already read is You Exist Too Much by Zaina Arafat. I read this for a Pride reading vlog, which I'll link down below, because I was doing an event that actually Zaina didn't manage to get to. It was a Twitter Spaces. It was a very odd experience, and I think it's meant to be like you're listening to a live podcast, but I don't know if it'll catch on. But what do I know? I didn't think BookTube was going to catch on, which is why I started a channel 10 years ago and stopped until 5 years later. So I'm sure Twitter space will be everywhere within mere months. Anyway, this is about a young American Palestine woman who is queer, and that's really difficult with her family's religion and culture, and it's how she's dealing with that, but also how she's dealing with her relationship, which isn't really going too well, and there's lots of secrets and stuff going on there, and she ends up being described with love addiction. I have to say, I ended up DNFing this. I didn't love it too much. I loved all the stuff about the culture clashes and where cultures kind of combine with the look at Palestine and America, and it also, with everything going on in Palestine, it was very eye-opening in that sense. But sadly, the present day storyline where she's sort of messing up her relationship and there's all this love addiction nonsense and clinics, and I just wasn't into it. I just find that something that doesn't appeal to me. I'm sure it'll appeal to lots of people, but it's interesting. I am noticing with dialogue books, I absolutely love some of their books, and then some of them I just do not get on with, and sadly this was one of the latter. So that's spoiled any wrap-up that's coming, hasn't it? No, it'll be mentioned in a wrap-up again. Speaking of wrap-ups, if you missed my Sunday video, if it goes up, I think it will have gone up, we'll see, you'll know by now, because it's Tuesday as this goes live, but I haven't done a June mid-month wrap-up because I was rereading the shortlist for the Desmond Elliott Prize at the beginning of June, and so I actually only had like 4 or 5 finished books to talk about, so I'm going to do one big June wrap-up at the end of June, funnily enough, or beginning of July probably. Anyway, there we go. That's my book haul part 1 for June, there will probably be lots more books in the second half of June because it is, as I mentioned, Indie Bookshop Week in the UK, and any excuse for me to buy lots of books in bookshops to support bookshops, and I will do it. Let me know what books you got in the first half of June. Let me know if you've read any of these and any of your thoughts. Well, actually, no. Let me know, apart from this one, which I've kind of said what I think about it, and Pandemonium by Andrew Macmillan, let me know if you've read any of these, but don't tell me if you hated them, because at the moment I'm very excited about them. And we can talk about the pros, cons, and everything in between once I've read them one day in the future, somewhere, somehow. On that note, I'm going to go. I'll speak to you all soon. Bye.